Decorating Pages is a podcast dedicated to taking you behind the scenes of the designs of your favorite TV shows and films. Each episode, I'll be sharing design stories from some of Hollywood's most famous sets, interviews from set decorators, production designers, directors, and actors about creating the look of TV and film, about their design inspirations, and stories that take sets from page to screen. Hello, and welcome to Decorating Pages. I'm your host, Kim Wanup. It's November. Half November's like over. Crazy. These holidays are creeping up on us, people, and I can't wait to have some time off. That's all I really want. I'm looking forward to holidays, but also this time of year, looking forward to all those good Oscar films that are in contention. Yay! My buyer, Katie Sheary, went to a preview this past week, screening of The Fabelmans, and she said it was really good. It's basically the life story of Steven Spielberg, and it was production designed by Rick Carter and set decorated by Regina Graves. Karen O'Hare. Karen O'Hare. I'm looking at my notes for Irishman. Yes. So she said it was really good, so I'm looking forward to that one. I don't know. What are you looking forward to this season? There's I feel like there's usually so many more movies out than there is now. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not in tune with it, but I try to be. I don't know. I'm doing this. I think I look at what's coming up all the time. But this week, I would say what Wanup's watching, not that much. I'm still watching White Lotus. It's good. It's not great, but it's good. I like it. The whole scenery of Italy is like gorgeous. But that's about it. And then I did some oldies but goodies. I did Steel Magnolias, which, you watch some movies at different times of your life and they can touch you in a different way. And I think it might be the first time I watched it fully since I had kids. And I'll tell you what, when Shelby dies, well, I'm not giving anything away. I know you've seen it as many times as I have. When Shelby dies, I lost it. I was sobbing. I can't. It was so good. But there was also a really good part at the end, because as I watch the credits, I saw the name Michael Okowedo, which I worked with him as he was an art director on Steel Magnolias, and I worked with him on Bones. He was a production designer. I might have known at the time, but I remembered, oh my God, this is one of the reasons, it's like Steel Magnolias influenced me, definitely set decoration wise and production design wise, because the way that they tell this story, because they meet almost at every holiday, and how it was decorated for the holidays in every scene, it very much influenced me. And then to see his name, it was like, oh, look at that. It's like a full circle type of moment. Why you're like, oh my God, I met somebody of a film that influenced me. This is crazy, which is kind of why I do this podcast. So, Steel Magnolia's production designer, Gene Callahan and Edward Pisoni, and set decorated by Garrett Lewis, Lee Pohl, and Bill Gregory. That says uncredited on IMDb. But, yeah. So I did a Steel Magnolias, and I went back and did The Irishman. Now, The Irishman, production designed by Bob Shaw and set decorated by Regina Graves, is beautifully done. It's period. It's perfect in that sense of design and capturing that period and, always. But the story, I was trying to think I always watch Casino. I always watch Goodfellas. Maybe I could throw an Irishman here and there. Now, the story of Irishman isn't that good, and all I do is focus on the CGI of Pacino and De Niro. It's too much. I can't focus on the movie because I'm looking at the CGI the whole time that they tried to make him like 30 years younger in like more than half of the movie. So it takes me out of it. But the design of it's great, but it kind of takes me out of it, of the story, focusing on their CGI. So that was about it. That's all I kind of watched this week. But very exciting is that I have 100 episodes of Decorating Pages coming up. And last week I was saying that if you wanted to reach out and let me know who your favorite guest is, or if there is any piece of advice that you heard on this podcast from anyone that, resonated with you, or just to say hi, I'd really appreciate it. And for the people who have reached out, thank you, because it's so supportive and it's so nice. So thank you so much for doing that. So if you'd like to let me know, you can email me at kimwanup@decoratingpagespodcast.com. You can DM on Instagram at Decorating Pages. And I'm on TikTok. I'm on the Face group. You got all that jazz. And I'm starting to put some videos up again on TikTok at Decorating Pages Podcast, because, I got time. I got plenty of time for that. On this week's episode, I speak with production designer Laurin Kelsey. Laurin has a really interesting story of how she got into designing. She was mentored by a prop master who taught her the day-to-day of production during high school summers. Isn't that awesome? After attending University of Victoria in Canada, she was accepted into the elite set and costume design program at the National Theatre School of Canada in Montreal. She then took a turn and moved to Germany, working in TV and film. And she started in the prop department and moved over as assistant art director, and is now a production designer. She's been working in the world of Mike Flanagan for the past few years, and her latest project is The Midnight Club, which is now on Netflix. The Midnight Club is about a group of terminally ill patients at a mysterious Victorian estate that has a history of patients gathering at midnight to tell scary stories. The sets of Midnight Club range from different periods of the scary stories, but is set against this old Victorian estate called Brightcliff Hospice. You can see more of Laurin's work at her website, www.laurinkelsey.com, and her IG is laurin.e.kelsey. So I hope you enjoy. Forget it. I'm just buying everything online because I hate dealing with people in stores and no, I'm good. I have to do that any day. Are you on vacation? Are you working? Are you still shooting?
No, so I finished Midnight Club. We finished last year, obviously,
right?
And then straight after Midnight Club, I designed Mike Flanagan's next show, The Fall of the House of Usher, and that we finished shooting in late July.
Oh, nice.
And now I've been on a break since then. So I went away to Europe for a little while. And then we had a slight lull here in Vancouver. We had a threat in the late summer of a DGC strike, so our Directors Guild.
Yeah.
So a few shows kind of went elsewhere for this time period, so it's kind of slowed down. But then I have more stuff coming in January, so it's kind of been a nice break.
Oh, that's good. Take the break.
Yeah. I'm taking the break.
I hope that you're going to do something that's not horror. It seems like
it's not horror.
Oh,
so
there you go.
Yeah, it'll be nice. I mean, horror is a funny one that I kind of ended up in because I used to live in Victoria, which is over on Vancouver Island, and when I was there, we only get sort of one larger show a year. Mm-hmm. And the one right at the time when I was looking to kind of move up as an art director and do bigger things was a horror, and then that production designer got me a job on another horror, which got me another horror, and so it was all kind of
because I was looking at you, I was like, whoa, this chick likes it. But sometimes, you get in that genre and then you just master it in a sense.
Sure.
And I always feel like that's a good thing. Like then you've done your 10,000 hours in horror and now,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. Well, and it's interesting. You learn the ins and outs of the genre. And I think what's really I've been pretty fortunate is that the last two shows have a lot of different time periods in them.
Oh my
So
God,
as much as
yeah.
it's sort of horror, you're not in like a contemporary world the whole time where the whole premise of it is about like jumping out from behind things
Yeah.
or the gore. It's been really interesting because we cover so many different periods and styles and looks, especially once you get into the fall of the House of Usher.
There's so much depth in horror now too. It's like you're saying, it's not just Jason or Michael popping out like killing everyone. Like there's real stories and you get like invested in these characters. Like I remember watching Midnight Mass and even like Haunted Hill, who's Haunted Hill, right?
Hill House. Yeah.
Hill House. I would say that. I was like, this is super cheesy, but I can't stop watching it. And then with Midnight Mass, I was like, this is all of a sudden like there's like a turn and you're like, oh, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And it's really good, but somewhat predictable, but I like it. But then something jumps out at you, not a killer. And it's really good. Like they're so well done. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, Mike's work especially is quite interesting. He always has a lot of depth to his characters, and there's always, I mean, I don't know if I can really say this, but I always feel like underneath everything, his stories are love stories. There's always a romantic kind of gothic love story, and I remember seeing Bly Manor and going like, oh, it's not as intertwined as Hill House, yada, yada, yada. And then at the root of it, it was this gothic love story again, or this sort of romantic theme underneath that made it more than just something creepy or eerie. It gave it so much more depth, and all of his shows have very much that kind of added depth, which I love.
In the beginning of the process as a designer, are you enthralled with like, what are we trying to achieve? Like, what is the thread that we're going to get through all these episodes, and not just the horror aspect of it. Like there's to me, there's so much detail in the Midnight Club with that house, and every room is such a character. Like how did that process start with him after reading it?
Yeah, I mean, I think Midnight Club's such a unique show because it has what we called the A story, which is Alonka and the other teens and the house. But in that A story, there's all these layers of what the house has been through in the past. And then you have all the B stories that are what they tell at midnight around the table. And what I really quickly wanted to understand was, how consistent and cohesive do we make everything when these stories are so vivid, and the house and the A story world is very period feeling, and what is the larger theme that is the most important, that's going to connect through, because obviously the show's set up for multiple seasons. So what's coming, and how do I factor that into what I know from reading the scripts of the first season? So
it's such an opportunity too, because in their stories that they're telling every night at this Midnight Club, some of them are black and white, some of them are period, some of them are modern day. Like I would, that opportunity to just like change in the middle of your show, just, all right, now let's do this period thing in the middle of it and tell this story. It's I enjoyed watching it, but I know it might be a pain in the ass to decorate it or design it, but it is, you're kind of doing like two shows in one, which is a lot. It's a lot to do. What is your prep and everything in your shoot in this?
Yeah, well, this was an interesting one because I got the first script, the episode 1 script, when we were all shut down during COVID. So that was like May 2020. We were still shooting Midnight Mass. Like all of our sets were standing out in fields. Like we built that whole town from scratch.
That town. That town, I watched some of that on a plane, and I was like this. I was like, wait, is this real? Like, did they build this whole town? That was amazing. That was amazing. And I really was like, when like award season came up, I'm like, yo, don't forget about that midnight mass, because they built that whole town. Like, that was like a lot.
I was thinking, I'm like, do these people know what that
No, I mean, really, bravo.
Yeah. So that's Steve Arnold. He's a phenomenal designer.
Yeah.
And
but everyone on your crew, you know, you all lend to it. I mean, that was really well made. And like that whole, just even the creepiness of it all and the aging, like everything about that little town, I just loved.
Yeah, it had a lot of character to it. It was a fun project to work on. And so basically I had the script for Midnight Club. Then we came back maybe 3 or 4 weeks after that to continue Midnight Mass. And had we even started shooting? No, we got shut down on a Friday, March 13th. And we were supposed to, day one of camera was on the Monday.
Oh my
God. Everything was ready. But we then were completely halted for like 3 or 4 months. Yeah. So we came back, and then obviously the schedule had changed. So things that were ready had to be taken down. So amidst all of that, I already had started Midnight Club. And in that sort of lockdown, I was really fortunate. I had 3 or 4 weeks to kind of absorb it. I only had one script. So it wasn't like I could, get through too much of it, but it really gave me time to actually sit with it, which I think is so rare nowadays.
Oh, yeah. Oh my God, yeah.
And really valuable because it gave me a lot more time to come up with concepts that supported all the themes that Mike was bringing, and to find sort of like my own rules for creating the worlds, because I wanted to try and limit color palettes and limit and come up with sort of theories of how each world would work, so that once it was all together, you wouldn't feel kind of overwhelmed and cluttered visually, right. Especially between time periods as well. So, and then we started, I had 2 months, month and a half of overlap where I was art directing Midnight Mass, and starting to hand that off to an assistant art director, and then ramping up and like doing all the location scouting for Midnight Club. It was quite busy. And then the same thing happened between Midnight Club and Usher. I think I had month and a half, 2 months where we're still shooting Midnight Club, and I started Usher. So it was quite a busy couple of years.
How many houses did you look at for that exterior of Midnight
Bright
Club?
Cliff?
Yeah.
You know what, though? We actually didn't look at that many, because in the script, as it is in the original book, it had to be over cliffs overlooking the ocean, fairly secluded, kind of like a Queen Anne Victorian, and it needed to have no other houses around it. And as much as like Vancouver's got like a plethora of shooting opportunities and locations, a kind of deserted Victorian house is not a thing here, especially looking over the ocean. So we kind of knew, I felt from the beginning it was always going to be some kind of a build. And this team had done, before I joined, they had done Bly Manor. And what they did for Bly Manor was they just built a door. And then the whole rest of it was shipping containers with green screen on top.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
And so they were pretty like familiar with that. And I'd been fortunate enough to, there's no barking during interviews.
I'll tell my kids that too. They're upstairs.
He wants to play. But I'd been fortunate enough that I had seen all of the drawings and the renderings from Lock and Key. It had just come out, Lock and Key Season 1. And the way that they did it, I thought was quite brilliant, and a nice balance between what they had done on Bly, The Haunting of Bly Manor, which was that they built the whole lower level of the front porch. So you had a frame of and obviously we do so much where you're doing green screen or VisFX above head height when there's no roto to deal with. So I thought and pitched to them that we do the same thing for Bright Cliff, that we build the doorway, the porch. He has enough to interact with on the wides. He doesn't have to worry about all the expenses of doing the VisFX to roto around cars and things like that. And then we do the top half of the house in post and VisFX. So that's what we did.
Oh God, I thought, I was like, oh, is this Grey Gardens? Is this like? I was like, where is this?
And not only that, it's not next to the ocean either.
Yeah.
So we found an incredible property that had this huge, our wonderful location manager, and it had this big cliff. And you felt like if you walked up to the cliff, there was going to be water on the other side. But actually, it's like farmers' fields on the other side.
Oh, wow.
So all the bench stuff, we went up and we basically Jimmy rigged blue screens all down the side of the cliff so that they could then put in all of the ocean. And then obviously when we do our beach scenes, we went to the beach because we have that here, but big high cliff house on a hill thing didn't exist. So we made it.
How big is your art department on this?
It kind of ranged. Like, in the beginning, we started the team with one art director, and one assistant art director, one graphic designer, and 2 or 3 set designers. And then obviously the art department assistant or PA and the coordinator. But very quickly, because of the scale of how many sets had to be done, and we block shot, obviously, for Midnight Club, we brought on a second art director. So we had 2, and we flipped back and forth between different blocks. And then eventually, for different reasons, different art directors left. So I think I had something like 5 different art directors for Midnight Club.
But that's a good size department. I mean, for the scale of all this, I mean, you need it. Was. I mean, I'm at the point now where I'm like, if I do these big shows, I need 2 decorators. Like, it's unfair. Yeah. It's not like...
Well, I've heard you mention it on your show before, just the way that things have shifted in terms of scheduling. And I didn't know if for you it was as woven with COVID as it was for us. But on both shows, we had so many times where it was like, oh, okay, an actor's out.
Oh, yeah, still.
So now we're going to bring up that set that was 3 months away. It's now 3 days away.
Yeah.
Okay. And then also but now we're not even doing any of the other things we planned for the next week. Now we're jumping way down the schedule and bringing it up. And of course, our job is to create these amazing sets, and they have to be ready in a particular time frame, and they have to deliver the needs of the show and the story. And, it was extremely challenging to kind of constantly be changing the schedule because you could never get ahead ever.
No,
because I don't. Every time you thought you were ahead, then you're 10 steps behind. So.
I begged for another decorator on the show, and they knew, and I was like, I'm done. I can't do this, and they know, and so I was like, look, I need to finish the perm sets. Like, we never, because of the schedule changes, I've never even finished these sets, so it'll give me the opportunity. And then it was the next week, like, an actor got COVID. And they had to change everything again. And then it was like, oh, I didn't even get to catch up. I didn't even get to get even. Like, the whole plan was just to get even. And I have never gotten even on the show. I still feel like we're drowning and we're on our last block. So I guess, oh well. But I do.
Is that Mankind that you're on right now?
Is it what?
The show that you're on, is it Mankind?
For All Mankind, season 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's... I don't know, and it's everyone, and I think that all of our work, I hope all of our work doesn't suffer, because it does a little bit,
Like, it does and it doesn't, right? I mean, like, part of the interesting thing about having to work at that pace as well is you have to be really extra creative. You have to solve the problem really quickly. You have to make snap decisions. And a lot of the time I find, like, sometimes the first decision is the right decision. It's like your gut instinct decision. And now you actually have to live with it. Like, that's the color you pick. That's the color of the set. We're shooting it tomorrow. That's all.
Yeah.
And I think it brings out a different side of your creativity. I think like, and I don't know how everyone else feels, but often if they gave me endless amounts of time, I would probably use all of it. Like I could always find more depth to dig into. So there's a finite balance between, killing us all to get us that ready.
Yeah.
Or just kind of like forcing the bus forward in a way that still sparks creativity. Yeah. I think as long as we get to be creative and we don't, put our health at risk, it's all doable.
I think you're right. And it does. There is something, I think, in all of us who are in this industry, you gotta jump and you gotta believe that you can jump. And, hopefully it all, comes out. And usually it does, because they shoot something then tomorrow. They're going to shoot something. Whether you're ready or not, they're going to shoot something. Yeah. That's the scary part. But it
Yeah.
does, you just go a different direction and, you know, you find I find another sofa or whatever, or, you know, but I was going to ask you about the wallpaper.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, I love
The
wallpaper.
wallpaper. Like, is that a designed wallpaper? Did you find that? Like, did you print it at Aztec? Like, what happened?
Yeah, I know, right? So I thought it was a really great thing to be in sort of that Queen Anne Victorian range for wallpaper. Obviously, there's so many beautiful papers from that period, and especially a lot of them have sort of resurged in popularity. Like I was in the mall the other day and I saw a dress with one of the wallpaper patterns we used.
Oh my God.
So there's a lot of suppliers that have that kind of 1890s to 1920s paper in stock again. So there was a couple that we were able to find, like the boys' bedroom and Natsuki's bedroom. Those were papers we were actually just able to order right off the shelf. And then the other ones, like the girls' bedroom, was a paper that I had seen in my research, are very similar to it, and we recreated and printed that one.
Oh wow! I love too the big leaf in the commissary.
Oh,
I just love the big
that was all hand painted.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. We have an amazing scenic team. And so, as well as the library.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was really drawn to, obviously, de Gournay wallpaper. And, but they're, all hand painted, like on silks and things. So it was out of our reach. So we adapted and did a mural. So I did all the elevations for the mural, and then we had our phenomenal paint team come in and paint the whole library. And like, you don't really see it a ton, even in the wides on the reverse to back to the doorway, but that goes up 17 feet in the air. They were up the lifts painting all the way to the ceiling.
Well, I was going to ask you also about the painting for the basement, like all of those paintings and everything, like if that was a graphic, that was like an overlay, or if this is like an artist came in, like...
Yeah, that was me plus I think about 3 different scenic artists. So what I gave them was, and I don't want to do a spoiler, but there's a story, there's a reason to those murals in the basement, and it has to do with a layer of the story that's in a future season. So I can't really explain it, but I gave them the scenery and basically kind of gave a rough painting of it, but it was quite small. So blowing it up, they had to elaborate on. And normally I'd love to give more detail, but it was one of those ones, unfortunately, where scheduling was, we were tight for time. So they got creative and they took their own sort of style, and the 3 of them just went around the whole room. It was totally phenomenal.
Oh, I loved it. I'm also have to applaud that you actually got information now to use in future seasons, that it wasn't like, oh shit, we never thought about that. Paint that in the background. Like, no one will know.
I think it comes from the fact that Mike is very passionate about limited series. And so to do Club, which is set up for multiple seasons, I think that he's still already planned out the entirety. And I don't know if it's 2 or 3 seasons. I've heard of a 3 sort of season arc. And so he gave me the broad strokes, especially in context to the spaces in the house and the history of the house, because you see all those, hallucinations of the old lady and the old woman and the kind of, early 1900s flashbacks. Or hallucinations. And that has its own layer of the house. So when we were talking about the house, it was like, okay, in 1910 it was this, in 1920 it was this, in 30, 40, and all the way through, because all those layers had to be visible and you had to be aware of the backstory of the layers, like where was the button for the elevator in 1910 or whatever, to be able to add the 90s layer on at the end. So he was very good about giving me a full rundown of what's coming.
I do think too, I paid attention a lot to the hardware because they're constantly opening doors, and you guys had a really great like antique and like period hardware choices. So those were great.
I love hardware. And we obviously Mark Lane was the decorator on that, and he's a phenomenal team of buyers, and I gave very specific reference, and they brought that plus, as buyers do, the plethora of other layers that they could bring into it with their own, their own flavor. So I think they found some great stuff.
So decorators do hardware in Canada?
Yeah.
I don't do hardware.
You don't do hardware?
No, I have an appreciation for it, but I don't do hardware.
Yeah, here set hardware and construction installs it.
New York, well, yeah, New York decorators do hardware too, I believe, and they do glass, and I don't do glass.
It's so interesting,
it's so
isn't
weird.
it? Like the different little dividers from region to region. But
that was beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful choices on that. Speaking of glass, the glass in the door designs. Your door designs also like this language that you've created on these doors walking through, and even the front door, like they were beautiful. Mm-hmm. Just beautiful. Yeah.
Well, one of the things, and you kind of get to see it in the basement, but you don't really know the backstory of it, is the labyrinth, the circular labyrinth painted in the middle of the floor,
right,
where she finds Kevin and where the cult took place and everything. And what I thought would be interesting was to take, because there's a larger story to the labyrinth, and to basically carry that through the house. So that's why everything's so circular in the house. You have like the big arched hallways. Yeah, circles in the doors, all the wainscot, instead of having like a traditional turn of the century wainscot, it all has circles built into it. So I tried to carry it because it's a part of the story that dates back to the people who built the house. I wanted to incorporate it into the house. And that the other side effect and the other reason I did that was because obviously Mike just did The Haunting of Hill House, The Haunting of Bly Manor. He's done some haunted Victorian homes before, and I wanted to come up with something that wasn't drawing on either of those houses, that was something totally different that we hadn't seen yet, as much as you can do within one type of architecture. So that's why I leaned into Queen Anne instead of Gothic, and why I went and tried to come up with different, like the foyer was the hardest thing for me to design, because we'd seen such a strong foyer in Hill House, and then another one in Bly Manor, and they'd done a center staircase, they'd done side staircases, right. And I was like, but there's no curved staircase, right. So that's where I'm going.
Check, here I go, over here.
Yeah. And the other side of the circles, and especially in the doors, is that the theory of Brightcliff is that it's built on the cliff, and the bright reminds me of the sun. So when we did the logo for Brightcliff, it's the same pattern that you see in the windows, where it looks like the burst and rays of the sun with sort of the little diamonds into it. And so we carried that into the transom windows, we carried that into the front door, and so you'll see that kind of repeated everywhere. And in the first episode, it's the only time you see it, but we actually built, it was, my construction coordinator almost killed me, 15 feet wide diameter dome stained glass ceiling. Like
in the
practically
foyer.
In the foyer.
Yeah, I thought that was CG. I didn't even think that was real. It was so real. Good. Oh my God. That was gorgeous.
It was a big challenge. But my coordinator, his name's Peter Grace, and he's phenomenal. He's lovely. He said, he made the mistake of telling me when I started, and I asked him, in the script, there's a big glass ceiling. What do you think about this? Can you do something like this? How do we do this? He said, I did that once before. I did it for, why am I blanking? It's the Robin Williams film when we were all, the one where he's in the game. It's the
Jumanji.
Jumanji.
Yeah,
he did the house in
Jumanji.
Oh my God. Glass dome. And I was like, well,
pull out your drawings.
You know how to do it. You can't go back on that. So that was a really fun but challenging thing. And we got it up there. Grips obviously assisted with living. It was all steel frame, and it was plexi, like shaped plexi.
Oh, wow.
With like lead on the plexi, so that it wasn't too heavy. And we got it up there, and I don't know if something dropped on it or what happened, but it ended up with a huge crack, like maybe 2 weeks before shooting, through one of the main panels. And so I had to beg, borrow, and steal to get everybody to bring it back down and replace the panel.
Oh,
yeah. They're like, you'll never see it. It's only in the one episode. And I was going like, no, I can't have a crack.
No.
It's not a thing.
I can't even make that part of the story. We have to fix it.
Yeah, has to get fixed. Yeah.
So you only had 2 months to build all of these? Because were any of these rooms, these were all builds?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. That's
so we had 3 stages.
3 stages. Wow.
Yep. 2 stages were exclusively the house. So I come from a theater background, so I like to get really creative with my stage layouts. And I was like, well, if we just put the hallways next to each other, even though they're on two separate floors, like it wasn't a traditional, you build one floor of the house here and one floor of the house here, because there were so many weird angles, and the hallways were especially meant to be so long that we couldn't practically fit everything that we needed to fit. So we broke it up in a very odd way. So one stage had, the front entry, the foyer, the hallway with the little triage room and Dr. Stanton's office, and a hallway with all the portraits that went to the library. Mm-hmm. And then it had randomly the conservatory with just a baby bit of hallway attached, and the arcade with a baby bit of hallway attached. Oh, and then on the other stage, we had the upstairs bedroom hallway, and then down to the recovery hallway, sort of that teal hallway.
Oh, yeah.
The elevator, and then right buttoned up next to it, like right into it, was the hallway that was the first floor hallway that would have been underneath it. So it was like they were right next to each other, snaking together through the stage. And then off of that, the library was practically built in its right place. Oh, wow. And then we got really clever. Well, we tried to, I think it's clever now, but at some point they said, well, we need a staircase. It's not just the elevator. But we'd already built the hallways, or we'd gotten too far down to like move them apart to make space for a stairwell. So we did a door between the two hallways, put a sign on it that said stairs. And then we had a lovely construction crew that would come in and basically take a little stair unit and two little wall flats with a handrail. Oh. And when they needed to go up the stairs, we just sit it in the other hallway so that it looked like we were entering a stairwell.
It's movie magic. That's
movie magic.
You would never know.
Yeah. And it seemed like similarly, the bedrooms, we didn't have the budget to build 7 different bedrooms of that scale and grandeur. So we built 2 big bedrooms and 1 little one that was Sherry's that never changed. She was added a little later. But the 2 bedrooms, we built the boys' bedroom and the girls' bedroom. And then Mike really loves, and I also love, but being able to practically do long shots, like down the hallway, follow her into a bedroom, follow her out, follow her into another bedroom. So he wanted to be able to go in the right doors for each bedroom, not like, hey, Natsuki opens the door and then we cut to and we've redressed Kevin's room. So we put the girls' bedroom and the boys' bedroom on trip jacks on wheels. We built the hallway practically with all the doors, and then we wheeled the bedrooms to the doors they needed to go to and change the wallpaper and redress them.
Oh my God. Wait a minute.
Everybody thought it was totally insane, but it worked.
I can't even grasp what you just said. You put the set. So if you were walking down the hallway and you wanted to go right into the girls' room.
Yeah.
You would, because the second door was somebody else's bedroom.
Yeah.
So you would take that set and just move it down.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it wasn't like continuous, but we could have 2 bedrooms in practical positions for 1 shot. That was enough. And then, the next day, we're not shooting Kevin and Spencer's room, but we're shooting Natsuki's room. We would roll it down to the next doorway.
You'd also have to redress it. You'd have to take it down.
Yeah.
Move it, and then redress
it to the next doorway. And then the next day they would shoot it as Natsuki's. And then, 2 days after that, we'd roll it back and it'd go back to Kevin and Spencer's room.
Wow. I'm in a whole, like, it's 1 room and it's 7 people's bedroom right now or some shit, and I hate it. I'm like, yeah. I feel like the more you work too, like even now, like, I'm going to ask that next time. What is the, like, changeover of sets here? Is everybody getting their own room, or am I redressing this 1 room 7 times an episode? Like,
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we had a great construction and set deck group and team and crew that were very good about, adjusting their shifts or addressing specific people that were like a lead carpenter that was in charge specifically of moving around the bedrooms. And he always knew how to do it, and he would be there at whatever time in the schedule needed to move. So without them being able to have that flexibility, it wouldn't have been as, and it wasn't easy, don't get me wrong, but it wouldn't have worked as smoothly as it did.
When you're block shooting, how many days out are you on like locations?
Oh, that's a really good question. I'm trying to remember for club. I mean, this is the crazy thing, right? Like when a show finally comes out, it's like 2 years
Oh,
later.
I know. I know.
You're like, how was that?
I know. And then you block a lot out too.
Yeah. Memory for sure. I would say because just 2 or 3 days. There's almost no location. Like there's a few locations. They were mostly for B stories.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. All of the stories, like those look like locations. I was assuming.
We built a ton of those too. Like for example, when you get into episode 4, the black and white episode, that classroom, like we had a school that was shut down, totally unrelated to COVID, like deserted high school. And we went and did all our hallway scenes in that. But then we built the big black and white classroom. We built the detective's office, the hallway for the detective's office.
Oh, wow.
We built the interior part of the cabin where Spencer is in the bathtub. We built like so many pieces.
Oh, man.
And we basically, that was our third stage. It was like our swing sets.
Was Dusty's house in episode 10, was that a build?
Yeah, that was a build.
I love that screen wall.
Thank you.
Oh my God, that screen wall is to die for.
I had that in my head so specifically when I read that script. I was like, I know that house. I've been in that house. Yeah. And I must have looked for 4 hours to find a photo of the screen wall that I had in my head. And I was like, the textured glass and it's amber color and there's spaces and it'll be so creepy because you'll be able to pan the past and look through and I was so excited about it. And no one understood what I was talking about. I could not find it. And I resorted to, because we were so busy at that point, napkin drawings being like, do you see what I'm talking about? This is what it is. To the point of like, even my set designer who was drawing it was like, I just don't understand it. I'm like, no, this is glass. This is open. Had I had more time, I would just draft it myself, but I didn't. So it was a challenge. And coincidentally, I actually was watching, have you watched Sandman?
Sandman, no, I haven't watched Sandman.
Sandman is designed by John Gary Steele, who did
Blow.
Lovely human. And he did Sandman, and in, I want to say episode 5 or 6, he has the same screen as me. It's the same.
Well, I kind of think there's the same screen in Dahmer too. Not the same screen, but like that concept is there.
Yeah.
And then I think there's like
because I could not find a photo of it in my life, and everybody was like, I've never seen this before. And I was like, are you joking? I have seen this. I know I've seen this somewhere.
But yours was big or something. It was more like it teetered on modern more than to me, like just as viewing it, like it was more modern than something like an older house or something. I don't know. It just stood out to me. It was just.
Well, thank you, because it was a struggle to get there.
Because I was like, oh, if this was a location, they brought that in. Or they got really lucky.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I love Dusty's house because I felt like for all of the B stories that they're telling, each of those is another Pike novel, right? So Midnight Club is one Pike book, and then every B story is a Pike book of its own. So I read all of those during COVID. I didn't even know which ones we were doing. I just ordered as many stacks of Pike books as I could get. And Dusty's really stood out to me because it was one of those stories that I read where I was like, what? That's totally nuts. And you don't really get all the layers of it in like sort of the modified shortened B story version. But I just had such a specific feeling about what that house was. So that was a really fun one.
Yeah, that was really great. Really, really well done. I have to ask too, like you started in props and then you went to Germany. And then you came back. Like, you're this is an enigma I need to dive into here.
Well, it's interesting. And like, I actually like explaining it because I think sometimes people, especially when I'm talking to people who are just entering the industry or who are interested in the industry, there's sort of like a few pathways that people think that they have to follow. Yeah, no. And mine kind of deviates from that multiple times. So I like explaining it because like, look, you can still get there. It's fine.
Well, I don't think anyone has the same path. I think
in film.
That's the thing that I think we all know, but until you talk to people like through this, like when I talk to people, I'm like, you were a ballerina. What? Like, That's always like, what? Oops, sorry, what? Or people who just decide, who are like, look, I never knew it was a job, and I was in my 40s, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna try this, and now this is awesome. So yeah, I love hearing everybody's story, origin story.
Yeah, totally. No, I agree. No, mine's I was really special. I was really lucky. Like when I was in high school, I was really into the arts and drawing, and I had a bit of like a natural inclination. I think it was gifted through my parents, but that's fine. They don't work in the arts, but they're very artistic, creative. But we had it would have been like grade 10. So high school, I would have been 16, and you have your guidance counselor, and they placed us in like a work experience for a week. You go off, usually you went with mom and dad to like their dentist or wherever, and you just hung out in their office for a week and helped and learned what it was like to be out in the real world. And she came to me and she's like, you really enjoy art. You're really good at it. She's like, I have a friend who's a prop master on a TV show, and it's in Vancouver. So I lived on Salt Springs. So this was like the big city far away, like an ocean in between. And she's like, I want you to go over and work for him for a week. I think you'd love it. And I was like, of course, you're 16. I would love to go work on a TV show. Sign me up. So I went over, and his name was David Sinclair, who was a prop master for Stargate for quite a few years. Lovely man. And he was so great at getting me access to seeing what everything was about. Oh, wow. So I would spend days on set. And I have really great friends in the industry still who like showed me around set 20 years ago when I was that age and that are still in the industry. And I was in production meetings. I got to meet, Peter DeLuise, who was directing, Martin Wood.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh yeah, they took me to lunch with the actors. I got to, back in those days, everybody ate together on their regulars. Yeah. So Richard D. Anderson, Amanda Tapping, they'd all sit at the tables or be in the line with us. And I just got exposure to so many sides of it. And I actually found not that long ago, it was an assignment we wrote maybe a year after that. And it was like, what do you want to be when you grow up kind of thing. And I wrote, I didn't remember this, but I want to be a production designer.
Oh, wow.
So even
it was
though
your vision board. It was your vision board. You didn't even know.
I took a windy road. So after that initial week, it went so well, and I was building props, and I was doing lots of drawings and like the scientist journals and cool things like that. And I was just obsessed. He hired me back like as a paid intern. So I kind of skirted the union for a little bit. I think he even contracted me to come over and work whenever I had time. So I did summers. I did like spring break. I didn't go to Florida and party. I went to Stargate. That was my spring break.
That sounds like a better party, man.
It was pretty great. And he would send stuff over to the island for me to draw or work on or build. He was really
wonderful mentor. What a
100%.
So generous.
Yeah, really. Like he really made it possible for me to have to see it and to enjoy it and to really participate in it and learn. I learned so much. And so at that time, there had been a writer's strike. So there had been a slump in work recently, like just before that, I think. So basically when I was talking to the guys, like, okay, I'm going to graduate high school next year. How do I get your job? Like, how do I do this? They said, well, like none of us went to university, but when we have slumps, it's nice to have something to fall back on. So every single person I talked to said, go to university, especially if you want to design, and take a PD course or take theater design. So I went and looked, and the only production design program that was of interest to me was at UCLA. As a Canadian, it was about $50,000 a year at that time, which was just not feasible for me. No. So I ended up going into theater design. So I went and learned set design, costume design, construction, pattern making. Like I can,
oh my God,
scenic painting, all the model building, hand drafting.
I love model building.
Oh my God, I love model building.
I love model building. Models. Oh my God, I miss it.
Yeah. I still do it. I do it as part of my process. It's usually in the very beginning before things get nuts. And I'd like to do a little white card model to really, especially the big sets like the library. I think I built like 5 different models for the library. Awesome. Because it was like, no, okay, it's too long. No, okay, you need more of these bays. Okay, wait, now we can't fit the sections of books we need. Let me
It
fiddle with
just
it.
helps you so much. Like if you know how to
Mm-hmm.
use it as a tool, model
Mm-hmm.
making, like in ours, like they're building all these models, these spaceships and shit, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
whoa. Then I was like,
Mm.
wait, what's this wall? What am I? Even for me, it's like I didn't catch that in the drawing. What am I doing over there?
Yeah.
Like, so I love model making. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I do too. No, but it was a great education. And then I thought, excuse you. And then from there, I went back over to Vancouver and went back into the film industry and was a model maker at a model shop for props for Stargate, which now was into Stargate Atlantis.
Oh, wow.
So all those contacts that I made had all moved up into higher positions. So they luckily hired me, and I was on set props and did a bunch of different things, but I really, really wanted to design. And I decided to go back to the island, back to Victoria, the bigger island, and do theater. So that's what I did. And then that led me to more traveling. I met someone who was German. And then it's a little bit of a wonky path, but I decided after meeting him, because he did, and what was typical in Europe is everybody needs a master's degree. I thought, okay, I'm not getting a lot of work as a theater designer. What's sort of the master's degree I can go get in design so that I can elevate my skills and get better jobs? And at the time, that was the NTS, National Theatre School of Canada. They take 8 design students, 7 from Canada, like the whole country, and then 1 international student. And out of the 7 from Canada, because we're 50% French, 50% English, they only take 3 English-speaking design students from all of Canada. So lucky me, I applied. You had to do a full design for a show, send a model, like color model, full model, like massive design, every costume, all the renderings.
Like making the cut. This is like,
oh my God, it was intense. So anyways, I got in, I went to the school.
Wow, congrats. That's amazing.
You. It was, it's a really, really, really cool school. It's in Montreal, so it was really neat to be on the other coast, well, not coast, but other side of the country.
Yeah.
But when I was there, I was doing long distance to Germany with my partner. And at a certain point, I really didn't feel like I was actually learning anything. A lot of it was very much back to the skills that I had learned in BFA. And I felt very grateful that I already had that many skills from my university degree. So I ended up leaving the program early and moving to Germany. And then there I was doing indie films, theater design. I worked a lot for free. I did internships, and I just wanted to build my portfolio and do whatever.
Do you speak German?
I learned it. Yeah, I learned German when I was there.
Wow. You learned German when you were there, but how did you, like, I know it's like, now I'm asking as if, like, I'm someone asking me, like, how did you just get to LA and know what to do? Like, how did you just get to Germany? And, like, were you in Munich? Where were you?
I was in Berlin.
Berlin.
So it was a really great city to be in. There was like, I needed to learn German to do a lot of things, but it is a very international city. The trouble with Berlin as an artist is that it's not really easy. It's easy to go there and create. It's not easy to make money because everybody in Europe thinks Berlin is like this artistic creative hub, which it is. It's phenomenal for that. But you get a ton of people coming after, like in their gap year or after uni to do like 6 months, and they have a savings built up. They're not there to get paid. They don't need to get paid. They're just there to create. And what it creates is Berlin has a really big thing with internships. So you can come in and do an internship and you don't get paid. And there's no promise of getting a paid gig after because they'll just take the next intern coming straight out of school or wherever they're coming from. They never have to turn those into paid positions. So I did probably a year of working for free, essentially. And during that time, I had other like sources of revenue. Like I did an online job for a Canadian company. I did this really weird telephone job from an office in Berlin just to like, pay the bills while I did all the free work, hoping that I could develop a paid position out of the free work, which I actually didn't really ever reach the point in those 3 or 4 years of getting where I could fully sustain myself with artistic income. Wow. And by that point, I knew that I was going back anyways. So I really utilized the time to learn and to try things and to build a portfolio. And that set me up for coming back over here.
But did you, this is probably like more personal than, did you think you were going to stay there? Did you think you're like, oh, I live in Germany now?
I think like it's really like, I'm sure, as you know, every time you change cities, you have to reestablish yourself.
Right.
And so it's not conducive to go somewhere short term and then
no, it doesn't
go other places. Like once you build your network, like, yes, your network at a certain level extends to other places. Like now my network extends to LA and Atlanta and New York and other places. But at the time it was sort of like, I went very instinctually for my relationship. I knew it would be good creatively, but I knew I didn't think I was ever going to put roots there in a permanent way.
Yeah.
And I knew after 2 years that I wanted to come back. It just took another 2 to actually get back.
So. I do think I was really under the illusion of like, oh, I'm going to make it in LA and then I'm probably going to move back to New York and I'm probably going to move back to Philly. And then you get to the like realization of like, I can't start over going back there. Yeah. And what am I, there's like, 70 shows here and 7 there. Like, what are my odds? So I do, whenever someone asks me, I'm like, just where do you want to live? Because you probably should set up there and really dig in because
it's time.
Yeah. But going back and forth is awesome if you can do it, but not many people do.
Yeah, it's true. It's really true. I think it's pretty interesting. Like, and I think really like also in terms of going back and forth, like you get really fortunate as a production designer because that's one of the roles that does travel, right? You do have the ability to be more mobile. So it's sort of like set up your home base, build your network. And then when you get those opportunities, if you're not too tied down sounds like a negative thing, but you know what I mean? You have so many responsibilities that you can't take those opportunities, then great. If they come up to try somewhere else. But I think setting up the right home base and home network is really critical. It's so much of building that career around you that, starting over just becomes...
And I always feel bad. And I know for a very long time, that designers were always being pushed up to Vancouver. And they were always bringing in crews and always bringing it. Or like now, like I know designers who are like constantly in Atlanta and then they come back and then they go back for another thing. And it's like, shit, people want this job there. There's plenty of people who are talented enough and ready to like dive into whatever this project is. Like I've always felt like, oh, they brought the whole crew. They bring in a decorator. They can't find someone in Shreveport. Like seriously, But yeah, I've always felt bad about that, and especially like, because I feel like early 2000s and like late 90s, like so much was going to Canada. There was so much going up there. So it was a real like, oh, because like, I'm going up there. Or like, hey, he got to go there and everything. And I'm always like, really? People up there? I'm sure I got plenty of people up there.
Well, there's interesting because there's a lot of good crew up here, like a lot of really good people, talented people, experienced people. But we also have had for quite a long time, a lot of shows, like more shows than we can probably crew to a certain extent. So yes, like right now, I think we probably have about half of the designers working are here on work permits from the US and half are local. And I'd love to see it 3/4, but I mean, it depends on what the shows are, where they're coming from, who's available, and what the fit is for the show too. Like, I find it so interesting. The more scripts that I read, sort of, you realize like not every designer fits for every project.
Right.
And that's also, I think, part of why a lot of the established US designers come up. They're the right person for the job a lot of the time. So,
right. Yeah. And I always think it's funny because it was always like, well, it's cheaper to do it in Canada. And I feel like Canada woke up one day and they're like, why are we doing this shit cheaper? I feel like there was like a wake up in like the mid 2000s or something. I feel like all of a sudden it's not cheaper to go up there and do shit. And I was like, well, why should it be? They're working the same hour. What's this lumber I don't know. Like, why is it cheaper?
I don't know. Right. I think that the difference, and I'm speaking a little out of my area of expertise, but a lot of it comes down to like the tax incentives.
Yeah. Oh,
Materials
yeah.
costs
Oh my God.
spiral
Yes.
all over the place. I can't believe the cost of a sheet of plywood
Yeah.
anywhere, let alone here where we actually are like making the plywood. But
Well, it's like,
it's
like all of a sudden there's like a rush here in like Oklahoma, and you're like, what the hell's going on in Oklahoma? Like, people are going there to make films, but it's a tax break.
Tax incentives. Yeah. Tax incentives. It's crazy. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, Vancouver is a fantastic place to work. We have a huge, like, diverse amount of different types of locations, which is so fun when you're designing, and even when you're not designing, you're art directing and decorating, because you just get to, like, there's just such a wide variety available, which I always find really great. For Midnight Club and for Usher, a lot of the times, though, we have a fantastic DP. On Midnight Club, we had James Neist, who's phenomenal. Then we also had Michael Fimignari, who usually works with Mike Flanagan, like, quite frequently. And Fimignari has a lot of shots, like very slow pushes, really beautiful, kind of like rolling the camera up and to the side, and things that are I think are really attractive. But with the cranes, you require a lot more space. So we end up building the sets because so many of the walls have to wild that we can't actually shoot the way that he'd like to shoot or they'd like to shoot in a practical location. So we built, I want to say we built more than 75% of both those shows.
But that's filmmaking. That's fantastic.
100%.
The designing and the camera work have to work hand in hand to get this emotion evoked, and especially when like horror and everything, if you're like traveling over walls or you want to go under the floor, whatever it is, like it really has to be hand in hand. And it's so nice when I hear that, like, oh, we did this so that we could get this shot. It's like, it's just always so exciting to me. Like, how much planning went in, how much, I don't care, money went into it, but like so much planning and so many departments were involved in getting this shot. And then as a viewer, when you watch it and you're like, oh, that was really good.
Yeah, it's worth it. It really is. Yeah. It's interesting too, like, so something I'd never experienced before, and obviously on Midnight Mass, where I was art directing, that was the first time I was exposed to it. But in terms of planning, when Mike Flanagan works with Michael Fimignari, they're incredibly thorough about doing shot listing. And so they want floor plans from us immediately. And even sometimes before we've given a floor plan, they've already, like, they're doing, instead of a lot of storyboarding, they're doing so much more with a floor plan, and they literally are marking, okay, camera shot 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. These are the ways we're looking. These are the walls that need to move on a window somewhere in this area, because that's going to give me the side light on these shots. And you're going like, I haven't designed it yet.
Yeah, they've already shot it.
This is amazing, but holy crap.
Well, that might be a little too much, but it's all working hand in hand.
Yeah, it works hand in hand, and it's like it's both a positive and a negative at all times, because they were also so great about being so specific about what they're going to see. You don't end dressing or building things that aren't going to be on camera. You just don't, because and they stick to it.
Oh my God, that's oh my God, gems. Like, hold on to them.
Information. Yeah, like, please. You don't need to look that way. Great, I'm not building that.
Yeah,
I'm going to save that.
Promise.
You're going to look at.
Can you give any details about House of Usher? When does it come out? When are we?
You know what? I haven't been given a release date. Mike usually releases in October. That's sort of like his month. So he usually series every year coming out in October. So I'm optimistically hoping it comes out in the spring, just because I'd love to see it sooner rather than later. But at the very latest, next September, October. It's a really interesting show, and it's more to the side of Hill House and Midnight Mass, in that Bly Manor and Midnight Club had multiple directors, multiple DPs, and we obviously block shot. Usher, it was like Mass, which we shot like a 8-hour feature. So we basically block shot by sets. So my God,
that's my dream.
It's
like oh my God, like Game of Thrones style. That's like my dream.
I know. Yeah, it is. And I was such a big fan of it on Midnight Mass, but what was different between Midnight Mass and Usher is that Usher just had so many more sets. So Midnight Mass had a lot, but it was like, hey, it's the whole town. So the whole town had to be ready, and then they'd be out there for 2 weeks, and you'd get to like hustle and get all your stage sets ready for when they come back. Usher, you're like, okay, great. We're going to block shoot, her whole office and the whole office building. Great. We're shooting there 3 days. It's a whole stage full of a set. Where are we going after that?
Oh, well then, yeah. And we can't build on that stage because you're shooting on that stage.
So we had 5 stages for the fall of the House of Usher.
Oh, wow.
At 2 studios.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So we were a massive, massive show. But I think it's a really cool show because it's the same combination. It's Mike Flanagan, Michael Famignari, no other directors. They did the whole thing.
Oh, that's great.
And Famignari, it blew my mind. He also directed. So Flanagan did like block 1 and block 3 or whatever. And then Fami did block 2 and block 4, wow. However they laid that out. So it meant that not only was Michael the DP through the whole series, he also directed. So he had no prep time outside what it was a 8-hour feature film for him, right?
Oh, wow.
So that's, I think, very commendable, how he was able to do that. But it's another one based on books. It's Edgar Allan Poe. And as Mike usually does, he takes a book. The Fall of the House of Usher is like a short story,
right,
at best. And he just expands into this huge world with all these complex layers and this beautiful story. And then each episode is another Edgar Allan Poe book, but it's all part of the main story. So the main story is about the family, the Usher family. And then each episode is like, the Telltale Heart or Mask of the Red Death. It's so cool. And it's just, I think it's just very creative how he wove that together.
He's really like, I'm so glad he made some deal with Netflix to really get all this out. Like, I feel like he's just spilling it out. He's like, I'm not as well known as like a Ryan Murphy, but he's churning shit out. Like, and it all does so well. Like, people love it. People are so into it. It's so great.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So, so I think, I'm really
Henry
excited.
Thomas must love it.
Okay. He's so great. And Usher, Mike was able to get some amazing cast. Obviously, he uses a lot of the same cast members with established relationships, which is great. So we had Zach Gilford is back in Usher. He was in Midnight Club and Midnight Mass. And obviously Henry Thomas. Yeah. But he also got, we had Mark Hamill on the Fall of the House of Usher.
I saw all those. I was like,
Skywalker.
Whoa, these guys. He's weird.
Like,
he's a little weird, isn't he? I don't know. I've only
lovely.
Yeah,
it was actually lovely. He was doing, I guess, one of the onsets, and I'm not a kind of, in our industry, you don't ever, I don't know how it is for you, but at least in the way I was sort of raised in the industry, you don't ask for autographs.
No, you're not allowed to do that.
We're at work, they're at work.
Yeah.
Even when you're seeing your childhood heroes, people that inspire you to be in the industry, you have to maintain this very, you don't fangirl out. But Mark was very lovely and kindly signed a bunch of things for he was our on-set dresser. And he said to her, I'd be happy if anybody in the crew that wants anything signed, gather it all together and I'll take it home one weekend and I'll happily sign anything anybody wants. So I sent a Luke Skywalker helmet home with him. Good. And he signed that for me.
Good. Oh my God, that's a gem.
Yeah, I know. And so I wrote a really nice note because I just thought that was just such
that's so nice.
To be so supportive of fans in that kind of way and the crew. And so he had me called down to set. Obviously, as a PD, we don't interact that much with cast, but he had me called down to set so we could sit, have a chat, and just talk. It was just very lovely and very great.
Awesome.
He's really cool.
Oh, that's awesome. I follow him on Twitter. It's a little weird, but that story makes me really like him.
Yeah, no, he was great.
What a life. What a
Yeah. Oh,
and to embrace it. There's so many people who don't ever want to hear their character's name of that movie that
because they're like, oh, I'm only known as this one thing.
Yeah.
He was really lovely about it. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, so in terms of cast, we have great cast and I think there's a lot of new faces, which is fun, and a lot of familiar faces, which I've grown to really enjoy about Mike's work, that you see the same actors because you get sort of this level of appreciation of how they flip into all these different worlds and you still believe. It's I think it gives them, even though it's a similar genre, so much versatility. You get to see their versatility.
Like the chick that was the nun.
Oh my gosh, yes, Samantha Sloan.
Oh my gosh. And then she was
so
in
cool.
this one, I was like, oh my God, there's the nun.
Yeah.
So
and she's
good.
in Usher also.
Oh, good.
And she was in Hill House. She played the wife of the oldest son, and I'm forgetting his name.
Oh, yeah. She's good. I like her.
Yeah.
I was also, just quickly, I know that there are references in the Midnight Club also to other horror stories. Like I read something about setting the bedroom up like the character in Nightmare on Elm Street or something.
Oh,
something like
yeah.
that. Or
so kind of like
a Nancy. Like I love that they use the name Nancy.
Nightmare on Elm Street. So Dream Nightmare on Elm Street, I think it's number 3, Dreamcatcher.
4.
And if Mike ever hears this and I didn't give the reference right,
I think it's 4. I'm going to vote 4.
Okay, thank you. I'll take it.
Okay.
But Heather Langenkamp was, not only was she in one of the Nightmare on Elm Streets, but then the 4th one was the inspiration for several different elements in the actual script of, and I want to say episode 7. So different directors, one that comes to mind was Axel Carolyn. She's fantastic. She's also done American Horror Story and things like that. And she specifically shot and had scenes set up that were very much callbacks to the film, like the therapy circle that Anya's in episode 7.
Oh, yeah.
And different elements from any kind of past horror film that had a reference we integrated into the sets. Like in Dr. Stanton's office, she has one of the psychology tools with the little silver balls that swing back and forth. And that was a callback, I think, also to Dreamcatcher, Dreamweaver, whichever one that one was. So there's a few little pieces planted throughout the series when it's sort of appropriate.
Was Heather on board for that? I wonder.
Yeah.
She was
cool. She was lovely. She was. There's always this interesting balance when you're a PD of cast and their interpretation of their characters.
Yeah.
And I've had quite a few times where cast has been involved in sort of offering up like their thoughts about what their spaces would feel like, which I love. Like some people are like, oh my gosh, like please, stay in your lane kind of thing. But as long as it's not dictating and it's supportive and it's sort of like, hey, this is the backstory that I have. Excuse you.
Yeah.
Then it can be really helpful. And she was one that had some really interesting thoughts.
Well, that's nice. It's not like demanding like on the day. Like there's a difference.
No.
There's a difference of like.
She sent an amazing email saying, I think that Stanton has spent all this time researching other cultures as well, and like death rituals and traditions, and that she's kind of an anthropologist in a way, which gave us a lot of ability to spin off. That gave us a lot of ability to spin off into like what kind of stuff is on her shelves, what kind of artifacts does she have, what are the books on her shelves about, and that gave us like a whole other layer to play with. So when it's like that, awesome. It's really inspiring and collaborative.
That's awesome. Like that's helpful.
It is. Yeah, it is. I thought that was really cool, and that we had that on Usher a little bit as well. We worked with Carl Lumbly, who's a fantastic actor, and he had a whole background to his character that was a really beautiful layer, because he was one of the primary cast, and so he sent me some ideas and he answered some of my questions, like research questions about what would be in his own personal spaces, which I loved. So
nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. Every time I've interacted with an actor, it's backfired, so I don't.
It's an interesting challenge, right? I mean, like they're the ones that are in the spaces. Like they need to feel like it's
absolutely
for their character, but they're not the designer or the decorator. Well, sometimes their ideas aren't aligned.
No, and that's
what other people want.
That's a bummer. Like when you're like, oh, he was in the army. Someone should have told me that. Yeah. But it's also just a growth of career or whatever, like just realizing a lot of times you, especially as the designer, you're on a long time more than the actor is cast. Might be a week before he starts. So, the development of the character has to always come through the design. That's just what we do. That's like so. You just hope that you're all on the same page at some point.
Yeah, no, it's really true. And I think a lot of our job also has a layer of politics to it, where you do have to be, you have producers, you have directors, you have DPs, you're pleasing a lot of people at once while kind of representing what's true to the design, and knowing when to stand your ground and knowing when to collaborate is a really important part of the job. And I think always with something like a suggestion from cast, I think like as long as I don't feel like it's endangering the vision of the director and the producers, I would love to be able to integrate or do something that makes them feel like, this is my space. And they can do their part, because their jobs are hard too. And anything that we can do to create an environment that inspires them even further is like the greatest gift, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I always want to, when you open set and you see like, oh, they opened that drawer and they saw that like, we went that way and we did this. And then if they comment on it, it's always such a compliment. Or even the director, if they comment on it when you've done something in the design or decorating, it's like, like, I'm in. Like, I'm thinking about this for months. So thanks for noticing that. Like,
totally. Yeah. Totally. I mean, opening set is such a great moment. Yeah. I mean, all the time.
Well, it could totally backfire on you, but like, like 99% of the time it's great, right?
Yeah. It's always, I do love like, because film is so collaborative, but we're working in layers, and the cast and director, like the last people to step on the set before it becomes what it is, what we see on camera. I think it's so magical, that moment where they walk in and they go, oh, I didn't even think of that. But you know what? That gives me this. Or my favorite is a DP comes in and sees it and is like, ooh, you know what I love now that I see this in person? I want like to do this movement and I want to use that. And you're like, oh my God, like my layer inspired another layer of them. And, that's like the kind of thing that film is. It's this collaboration. And if you can inspire someone else, like how great is that?
Well, that's the whole thing is like your work, it inspires someone, coming up. Like that's the whole thing. We've all been inspired by other work and, hopefully that you get remembered by them. That's always my thing. Like, I hope someone remembers my work. And I do usually always ask, are you watching anything now that's inspiring you?
That's a really good question. We've just finished quite a few shows, to be honest. So my partner had never seen Game of Thrones as that is. So we did all of Game of Thrones in like the span of a couple months. He broke his legs. So
perfect.
We got to just like get on my couch and burn through about, what was that, 14 years of television?
Yeah, perfect.
And that was actually really fun because we actually worked together. Usually we work together. He's a lead carpenter. Oh, awesome. And so to like look at something that I already inspired me years ago, but then to get like see him get all lit up about it was actually like really fun. And so that we watched that so that we could do House of Dragon. So we've been watching that. We're not all the way through. And then, oh my gosh, what did we just watch? Holy heck. Really memorable. And not in series, but in features we watched Bullet Train, which I thought was really fun.
Oh, was that good? I haven't seen it.
It's fun. I mean, like, who doesn't love, Brad Pitt as a sassy assassin. He's funny and charming. But I really admired, from a design standpoint, watching the different cars of the train, because there's all these, action scenes. So obviously, like, all of those sets that they built had to be very multi-purpose, seats break apart and the train, goes off the rails and there's all kinds of fight scenes with knives and things. And
sounds like an on-set nightmare.
Yeah, but the train was like stunning, like such a beautiful, beautiful train. So
that's fun. Yeah. And it's Brad. You get to watch that.
and it's Brad. So
Although,
there's no losing.
I'm on the Sony lot and they had so many posters for it. I don't know how it
Oh my
did,
God.
but they were sticking it down everybody's throat over there. In the
Oh, they
lot.
were for sure.
Yeah, but all I remember is like they're really pushing everybody's like wardrobe. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't tell.
Yeah.
I can't remember anything from a preview about that train, but all I know was there was a lot of flashy wardrobe going on. That's all I know.
Yeah, and then he wears that horrible hat.
Yeah, and the hat. That's what I was like. Why is he in a hat? Was that his thing?
All the premieres, because it kept flashing up everywhere, and I was going, what is this film? Because all I kept seeing was him going to premieres in that like suit with the hat, and I was going like, he's got a really unique new look going on.
It's not working. So whatever it is, it's not working for me.
It's the hat. I have a problem with the hat, but anyhow, it's a good little film to watch. It's fun. It's funny.
Oh well, that's good. That's a break.
Yeah.
I feel like I was texting my mom today and really talking about like what we watched. So it's like, well, this one's sad. And I was like, oh, and then I watched this documentary that was really sad. And then we're watching the Val, like all these things. I'm like, wow, we need an upper.
Yeah.
So maybe Bullet Train. Maybe I'll get that going.
Yeah. One thing we watched recently that we absolutely loved, but it's a little off topic because it's a docu-series, was Ryan Reynolds' Welcome to Wrexham.
How was that?
Oh my God, it was so good. It was real life Ted Lasso. It was hilarious and charming. And if you didn't already love him as a human, it just infatuated even further. And Rob, I'm always going to mispronounce his last name, but Rob McClinney from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Yeah, so funny and so lovely. So it's the two of them buying this football club in Wales.
Yeah.
And then the journey of them trying to salvage this club. And it's quite brilliant. And my partner's English, so he's a big football fan. Soccer.
I just watched the preview for that. Like,
it's
I think
so
last
funny.
night or the night before, and I'm like, oh, I'm putting that on my list. Like,
yeah, if you want an upper, that's an upper. You just smile the whole time. It's fun.
Have you watched Ted Lasso?
Oh yeah, I love Ted Lasso.
I like it. I can't get through it. Like we stopped watching, I think, like second season, and then like every once in a while, like, oh, what do you want to watch? And I'm like, well, we have Ted Lasso, and I'm like, it's been months since we put that on. Like, I get it. Like, I don't know. It didn't. I like it. I think it's great, but I don't get why it wins everything. But like, I like it. I don't know.
I think it's nice. What I like about it, it has nothing to do with design. It's all just that I like having a good laugh. Yeah. But it's heartfelt. It's like nice. It feels very genuine.
Yes. So. I think that's why a lot of people like it, because they want to think that they're good people who like good people.
Exactly.
And really, we're all watching like Netflix horror shows. So.
Yeah, and I just listened to your interview for Dahmer, so that's on my to-watch list. Yeah. But it came out the same week as Midnight Club, and so I refused to watch it because I was trying, because it was like Dahmer was number 1 and Midnight Club was number 2 for such a long time, and obviously The Watcher came up the list. I can't watch either of those until we're off of the top 10.
Well, it's so funny because... is it Melissa?
Melissa Leach?
Oh no, not the decorator. Your agent. Your agent who she's like, oh, she did, and I was like, I just started that. I can't wait to talk to her. I'm in.
Yeah,
because it was Dahmer took me a while to get through.
I haven't been able to watch it. I've read a lot of scripts for serial killers, and I was up for a serial killer feature that's up here in Vancouver. And there's something about Dahmer that just it's so, I remember hearing so much about it that I think there's a very interesting, like, don't get me wrong, serial killers are kind of fascinating in their own way. And I will 100% watch crime TV shows all day long. But that one was like, I don't know if I'm ready to see the realism of what transpired.
The only thing I will say...
I will, but
it took me the thing I would say is I was proud of, like, Ryan Murphy World for not taking it to, like, the horror story level of, like, blood... and gore and everything. There's real story there, and they do really focus on these victims. I love the guy, I forget the actor's name who plays his dad. They do a whole episode on him. Like, it's all fucked up. Like, and it's just they show it all. And so the first 3 episodes you're like, oh god, don't what are you cooking? Like and then it goes back really into the stories, and they did a great job, like, bringing those sets to life and really.
Yeah.
The grandmother's house was great. I could talk to her about that forever, but.
Oh, I'm looking forward to watching it, especially after listening to the interview.
No, well, thanks. Thank you for giving me some time on a Sunday. Thank you. I hope you're not stuck in that house now in a snowstorm. And wasn't that just fascinating that a high school counselor gave her the name of a prop guy, and the guy was totally willing to like help out and mentor a high school student? I mean, that's a good one. That is a good origin story, and the inspiration that he gave to her, and you know, just fulfilling that passion and showing her the way, I think was amazing. And the fact that she then, you know, took that and studied and worked to become a production designer and turned it into, you know, something that's fantastic. That was a great story. Did you like those little doggies? They wanted in on the podcast, man. I took some of it out, but they wanted in. I appreciated their little yappies to be a part of it. But thank you so much to Laurin for giving me some time, and I am really looking forward to her next gig, because I'm a big fan of The Raven. I had always scared the hell out of me, and so to me, the Fall of the House Usher, I think it's going to be really good. And that Mike Flanagan guy, he really knows how to write them. So I'm excited to see her work and continue to be a fan of it. So yeah, I'm glad she got a chance to talk with me about it. What else? What do I have coming? So coming up, again, I have the 100th episode coming up. So if you want to reach out, Kim Wanup at decoratingpagespodcast.com. Always on IG or Facebook, wherever you want to contact me. I'm in, because I want to hear from you. But yeah, I have some good episodes coming up too to end the year. Next week, I'm going to talk about how to break down a script as a set decorator. And then I think I'm going to get into how to budget. I don't know. That's really hard to do. So yeah. Budgeting, or maybe salary. I don't know. If I could just tell you how much I make, and then we can talk about negotiating. How about that? But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So I hope you got an earful. I'm Kim Wanup for Decorating Pages. We're floating into the holidays, and before you know it, it's gift time. Perfect gift is stogiefloaty.com for those who like to float in style. Stogie Floaty luxury pool float available at Etsy and stogiefloaty.com.